There we go. You know, when you move in, let us know.
All right, well.
79T 2458 Learning Corp, Little Red Riding Hood, take one.
It was such a abrupt one, dude. I figured I'm like I don't use that video at all. I have that video. It's us at a convention in Florida that Shellbot me named. Figured I was talking about traditions, so why not? I'm like, dude. Speaking of tradition, remember the traditional convention that shall not be named? Yeah. Yeah, the intro, by the way, if you want to know, it's called Humboldt, Humbolt. I can't remember who the artist is that does it, but it's on Epidemic Sound. Yeah, I figured I'd get all kinds of stuff right now. Speaking of tradition, and this is totally off topic, whatever. We got, you know what, it's my podcast. If I'm going to spend 2 minutes talking about something you don't care about, so be it. Yeah, like the looks I've had on this stupid show over the years. We've had high and tight. We've had a mullet. We've had a mane of hair. We have this short and clean, with glasses, without glasses, Hawaiian shirts, cardigans, the vest with like hipster clothes, like everything. We just got everything here. The look is constantly changing. Halloween is over. Lose the glasses. It's real glasses, man. It's reading glasses. And I gotta admit, I never thought I needed them. I never did until the girl was just like, here, try this. And then she handed me a little Kindle and she's like, look, give it a read. And I gave it a read and it's like on the small font. I'm like, holy crap. It's not that I can't see without them. It's that because I have astigmatism, my eyes have to take more effort to focus on things. And so it just makes everything much snappier and I get way less tired. Like my girl has, because she's like, well, if you're going to start writing fiction, here's a Colleen Hoover book. Read what the best author in the world is doing right now. Not gonna lie, I would have never gotten through it without these things. Because it's like reading a rom-com so far. I don't know, whatever. Anyways, enough of that. What the hell is he talking about with this topic? Tradition is not what we have, but what we return to. This is actually very funny. I don't talk about it much. Oh, thank you, Wave Saver. We don't talk about it much, but a lot of the talk that everybody has where they want to return to some traditional values, not really traditional. It turns out the traditional values are kind of the stuff that we're returning to. And I'm going to give you some examples. They're going to be, I didn't want to go full research because I could very easily give you like a bunch of examples and notes. And at that point, it's like, we're not doing Fall of Rome here. These are illustrative examples. They're not descriptive examples. So the idea is you're supposed to take them to understand the point of this, not, well, technically in the Edo period in, 1893, they didn't do this, but in 1894, they relax. Talk about a main event. Yeah. The guys are joking. The horse jokes are because I was doing a couple memes. I've been playing around with AI. I'm trying to find a use for it. And I found memes. Why not memes? So I did a bunch lately of like the Edo period in Japan or the Meiji Restoration. I'm like, give me some Japanese wood prints from the Meiji Restoration of this. And it's all the same goofy stuff we have now, and they're pretty clever, I guess. It's almost as clever as last week when I was doing Sesame Street and Chad was wearing my Hawaiian shirt talking to the guys about, yes, sir, he belongs to the streets, Elmo. Yeah, right. I could change the world, Ryan. Funny pictures, exactly. I have a few examples. So the ones I'm going to go over are, I think it's Meiji Restoration and Victorian France, and mostly France, but somewhat England, definitely Germany. And you're going to like those. That's going to go over why all this thought of returning to tradition. I mean, there never really was a tradition, and it really is the case that when people think about tradition, they think of the period between 1940 and 1945 and 1970 in America. And there was a very, very tight window of certain environmental and technological changes that made that entire realm possible. And it really is an outlier. It's an outlier. Need some horse chick memes. See, I got a bias against that because technically 3 of my sisters are horse girls. We were from a ranch. And so when I say this, it feels like I'm rebelling against my family. And a lot of those horse girl memes are not real. basically like the one thing I will say that's true about horse girls is that they love to break strong men into weak men. And I don't know how else to put it other than that. I've watched all three of them turn their boyfriends from Chad incarnate to like the weak beta male that we always make fun of on Twitter. And it was a piece of work. I'm like, oh my God, he's crying. I was like 10 years old. I'm like, Jesus, he's crying. Why would he do that? Didn't he just sell drugs last week? You don't sell drugs and cry. You have to be all on one side or the other. Unless you're selling Ritalin. All right. And once we're through with that stuff, it's going to be kind of a hodgepodge of like a bunch of topics that I don't have enough for an entire topic of a podcast on. But I kind of do want to go over them. And we're going to riff off the audience. I think you'll like it. So since we're starting, I have a meme in here. I don't know what this is. Oh, that's what that is. Okay, I don't need that. Since I'm going this route, I was going to make fun of somebody and then we were going to get started. Who should I make fun of? I mean, you can't go wrong with old Pat Stedman.
I love the way girls smell. I love how they always make sure, by and large, they shower, and they just have an amazing smell to them in general.
Do you know why women cheat? Do you know why women fool around? Do you know why women ruin empires? Frankly, my friends, they do it because they are safe and they are bored. And the female brain is not designed to have nothing to do. And to give you a good example of this, we're going to go back to Japan. Let me make sure. You know what? I'm going to... One second here. Women cheat. I want to make sure I get it right. If it's the Meiji Restoration or it's the Edo period. I think it's the Edo period. Yeah, that's the one. Under the Japanese legal system of the Edo period, that's 1600 to 1860s. A clear distinction existed between provisions concerning family matters, samurai class, blah, 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 marriage and dowries. Okay, so it's very simple stuff you'd think of before, right? Here's the thing. Women weren't allowed to work. Women weren't, because, I mean, everybody was samurai or peasants, and everybody was out fighting wars. There was a lot of internal conflict on there. It's the... I can't remember what the name of it is. I want to say the Romance of Three Kingdoms, but that's China. There's a Japanese version of that. And what happened was women were doing the same thing that you'd think of, and you're going to start to notice a lot of parallels between like women today. So back then, pale skin was seen as a high status, high attractive trait. Who decided that? Women, because women are bitches to other women. And so it was always the white face paint, like the white lemon bleaching to the skin. And because women were trying so hard to look whiter than the other one, they found that their teeth would look yellow in comparison. Even though you had white teeth, it looked yellow. So what they would do is they would blacken their teeth to give more contrast to their face. And that's where, and it's like, go look it up. Go look up like geisha black teeth or something like that. Where you get that white face and the black teeth. It gives a lot more contrast to it, to the white face being white and very good. But if you look at it, you're like, dude, it's like, I can't sleep with a dancer from a Limp Bizkit video or a Marilyn Manson video. I can't do it. But back then, they were all over that. So women weren't allowed to go outside. They weren't supposed to talk to other men. It had that kind of like Islam vibe to it, you know? Like, hey, put this covering over your head and blah, blah, blah. And then they were home, and then they had servants, because the husbands, the samurai and the husbands and the aristocrats, they're like, you know what? My wife needs a reward for good behavior. I am going to handle everything. And they would have servants, and they would have maids, and they would dress her, and they would do everything. And she was at home all day, and she was bored because she had nothing to do. She couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't talk to anybody. She couldn't do anything. If they were talking to people, they had to put like a screen between them so she couldn't even see who she was talking to. Couple side effects of that. I guess for all literature out of this period, women were writing like a lot. In fact, being a woman writer was so lucrative back then because that's all they had to do was just write poems and books and policy, all that stuff. Sometimes even guys who wanted to write, they pretend to be women so that they had a chance at selling some copy. Warring States period. Thank you very much. So here's the problem with this. You get a lot of these bored aristocratic women. They have no want for anything, and they were cheating constantly. They were sleeping with the help. They were sleeping with the samurais next door. There was so much of it going on. So much of it. And yeah, the samurai guys were like, we go and take over a prefecture over here and we can sleep with these chicks, and they go home to their wives like a King Odysseus kind of thing. So everybody was sleeping with everybody. Arguably the most Puritan, the most godly, traditional time in Japanese history. And everybody was acting in what you would call degenerate ways. And it kind of came from the lack of understanding of human nature. Women are social creatures. People are social creatures. Women are like extremely social people creatures. And so they need to have all this stuff out of their system. And they need something to do. If they don't have anything to do, they get bored. When they get bored, they start destroying things. Because as a woman, you're pretty used to people not trying to hurt you. As a guy, fuck around, find out is like your main MO. I mean, it's always your main MO. So that's what we're doing here. So a couple side effects of this is that the best writers in the world at the time in Japan were women. Women were sleeping with everybody. Infidelity was huge. And a lot of war and a lot of guys getting stabbed. And that's just the way it works. And that's the problem. Because you could argue this is a poly type scenario. One woman, multiple concubines, men sleeping around, whatever. But the concubine thing, that caused a lot more violence during the Warring States period. It's basically like a civil war. I don't remember how long it went on. How long did the Warring States period cause? I want to say it's like 100 years, but I got to double check this. Oh, that's way older than I'm thinking. Oh, no, that's Europe. Oh, no, is that Japan? I'm getting the dates all messed up here. No, that's China. I want the Japanese one. Ah, there it is. 15th and 16th century. So that's the period we're talking about here. Yeah, constant fight, constant war. Horrible. And Dave Scott in the chat kind of sees it. The girls with the strictest upbringing rebel the hardest. Yeah, it's like understanding human nature makes these things a lot better. Now, if that sounds a lot like I was just saying, Colleen Hoover, greatest author right now. J.K. Rowling, greatest author right now. Marriage is in the toilet. Everybody sleep with everybody. Poly's the new coolest thing if you're online and don't talk to real people. It sounds awful lot like this Japanese Warring States period. It's like, yeah, well, welcome to it. I mean, obviously we're not very good at fighting anymore. Yeah, there's the Ukraine thing. But I mean, for the most part, it's Palestine protests in Toronto or Black Lives Matter protests in Portland. Really goofy LARPer. That's the one thing we have today that we didn't have back then. Back then, you had to war because people needed crops and you needed to eat. Nowadays, everything's taken care of. Everybody is essentially that girl sitting behind the curtain talking to people. So when we start having our more violent society, we do weird shit. Like a Black Lives Matter protest, or we start toppling statues of Civil War veterans. Or like, yeah, fuck General Lee. This gives me meaning and purpose. I'm so bored. The Heian period was like that too. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. So that was, and that's, it's interesting because I noticed for a lot of people, and this is something I've recommended. It was mostly for game stuff. I talked about one of my biggest places to take girls for dates was like a museum. And it was like, what's that nerd shit? It's like, well, my degree was in art history, graphic design. Art history was my major, and I thought it was just a fascinating field. And it's amazing how you learn, as you learn about the history of art, that art is best described as tradecraft and visual philosophy. Tradecraft because it used to be like cobblers, masons, artists. Fresco paintings, you have to mix the egg, do the thing. It was more science than art, I guess. Okay, but put it that way. And then when photography came around in the 1800s, they removed the technical tradecraft aspect of it, because you could paint the greatest high Renaissance naturalistic painting ever, but a photograph can do the same thing in 45 seconds. So now that art has lost its main purpose, what is art? And then we have been on a 200-year journey to answer that question. And we've had all kinds of answers. And most of the time when you see people, this modern art is garbage, it's an attempt to answer that question. So like, for example, if you see a Jackson Pollock painting, you know, the ones that have just paint splatters everywhere, it looks like just a mess. Well, that was called action painting. CIA paid for it to show off for the communists. There's that background to it. But Pollock was like, okay, so if painting isn't making the world look as the way you see it, then maybe it's just the fact that I'm putting a paintbrush and moving it around, like that is art. So why don't we just deconstruct that, make it purely about moving the brush across the paint canvas. And it's funny too, I remember in my art class they were talking about, because he was using very shitty quality paints too. And so there's the Museum of Art, the Met is finding that the paint chips are falling off. And so they're desperately trying to re-glue things back on and make sure it all sticks. It's pretty funny to hear. But then again, too, that was right during the period of mass production and automation of things like Warhol, Campbell's Soup, you know, McDonald's, even the Queen and the beggars drink the same Coca-Cola. And so it's interesting to see that mass productive, like cheap, easy to destroy techniques was also finding its way into art. So it's like, it's a period of its time. And if you think I'm just making that up, well, then you can go back to the modern stuff like Impressionism and Expressionism. Impressionism was about, it was basically photographs before photographs. That's why you see all like the big thick lines in that when you watch. It's because they were trying to capture a specific moment and that they had to use very quick and dirty brushstrokes to get there. And that's how you get all those paintings of flowers on the serene rivers and blah, blah, blah. And then Expressionism was more, how does something make you feel? And that's why Van Gogh's stuff is very fluid and stuff. Anyways, but that's the whole point of it. So yeah, I'm not talking out of my ass. This really is a ongoing philosophical movement. Now, what does this have to do with hoes being hoes? This is what I was getting to. The museum game. Bring a girl down to a museum and they didn't care about art. No, hoes don't care about art. Like, what is this? A painting? It's pretty or it's not pretty. I like it. I don't like it. It gives me the ick. That's it. But in the same way that when you're sitting at a coffee house and you're people watching, you're like sitting on there with your date and you're like, hey, you see that couple over there? I bet you this is their first date. She'll say some shit like, no. I think they've been dating a while. I think they're like married. And you're like, really? And then you start talking about, well, that's because he's doing this. He's paying way too much attention. If she wasn't a brand new date, he'd be on his phone right now ignoring her. And she's like, no. If you look at this, her knees are doing this. And you could have this whole conversation. It's called us versus the world. And that's a great way to build rapport with somebody. And you're using other people around you as proxies. Now, the art stuff is the exact same thing. They don't give a shit about art, but I give a shit about art. I'm not the greatest art guy, but I give a shit about art. I like it. I find it enjoyable. I love to like, oh yeah, and this is there for this reason, and this is here for this reason. Oh, this girl actually painted these boobs, and she was like trying to send them to a lover to get him on a date and stuff. And the girls just kind of feed off of that energy. Wow, he's really excited about something. I like seeing a man with passion. It's so much better than that guy who keeps calling me bro. You know? Modern art is amazing. Contemporary art is a grift. They have no ideas left to just copy the revolutionary ideas. Those guys had it peaked with Duchamp's signed urinal. Well, that's funny that you put it this way, and I would argue that is the philosophy of our time. That's why I always like that picture of the duct-taped banana on the wall, and everybody's like, oh, it's just a grift. I'm like, yeah, that's the empty, vapid philosophy we have now. Nobody wants to make ideas. Everybody just using us for self-gain. It's like that late-stage capitalism shit, and he's like, a banana on the wall. Emperor has no clothes, and everybody will pay money because they're laundering money, and it's just like, it won't last 100 years. It's a temporary thing. Like, you're looking at this, you're like, this is the biggest piece of shit ever. It's the biggest piece of shit ever. It's temporary, it's fake, it's a grift. But then you realize, like, that is what you're getting from it. You're literally watching Tate's War Room and reading the transcripts of the court filings saying how he was trafficking women. You know that? Like, dude, he's supposed to help men? What is this shit? And this is like the artistic equivalent of that. And there will be photos out until the end of time of a bunch of rich bastards staring at this banana up on the wall, pretending that they have found the best art when really they're just trying to siphon money to the Ukraine. I enjoy. It's like watching a Japanese action film where they have to like make you depressed, or like Old Boy. Remember Old Boy? Dude, you ever watch the ending to that? It's the most depressing shit ever. And it's like, this is like the artistic equivalent of that. But see, this is my point. The whole point of studying history and art is you get a better idea of how the world works, and you're better able to adapt previous ideas to contemporary life, you know? Michael Maxey, $5 super chat. This is why I would buy a book on game if Ryan made one. To be fair, if I made a book on game, I would just game you guys, and that's why I would just sit here and talk about museum game for like an hour. Will it help you? Probably not. But it would be a good example of game as I'm gaming the audience. It's always like Tate's talking about taking advantage of beta males and gets you signed up to the war room. It's like, what a great example of how to take advantage of beta males. You're living the experience. Tate actually predicted that Tate's downfall in a video 3 years ago. Was that the one with him and me? Because I hope so. I want to be part of that magic. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. So the history. And it turns out there's like a whole bunch of disparate things here. So keep in the back of your mind what I was talking about with the museum game, understanding the history, visual philosophy, feeding off the energy. And now I'm going to switch this topic, but it's still the same topic, where the Ryan method. Why am I talking about history? Well, that's because critical thinking doesn't exist. A lot of guys, and this is more than game, this is more than all that stuff. A lot of guys think critical thinking, like the ability to think your way through a problem, is a skill into itself. The ultimate in Reddit energy. The ultimate in Reddit energy. Where you think, well, if I train myself to be a great critical thinker, you could put me into a situation that I know nothing about, and I can figure it out. It's not how it works. It turns out, not only does critical thinking not exist, critical thinking is a form of self-gaslighting, and it does not work. It turns out the way to gain, I would say wisdom would be a nice word to use here. The way to gain wisdom is to gain a large breadth of knowledge and to be able to synthesize it as needed or recall it as needed. So yeah, if you want to talk about somebody who's like, I'm a critical thinker when it comes to the English language. No, the guy who studied the English language and understands all the different aspects of it, he is much smarter at that than other guys. And this is why you think in your head, like, I guarantee you everybody here thinks critical thinking is a great skill. And then you watch some Redditor make up some bullshit that has, like Destiny's, perfect example, where he has an internal worldview that's completely ideologically consistent, intellectually consistent. He talks fast, you follow him there, and it all makes sense. But it's all based on bullshit he just made up. Garbage in, garbage out. And that's why critical thinking doesn't exist. And this is why I'm talking about the Japanese Edo period, the Warring States, whatever you want to call it. Because had you been that guy who studied art history and they got to see a lot of the art and styles that came out of Japan at the time, you would understand. Or if you're just a history buff, you know those guys that study ancient Rome all day because it's fun, or World War II, or the Bronze Age collapse, same thing. There is a lot of stuff to learn from this, and you'll see. Now, granted, a lot of people are saying, well, the Bronze Age collapse is happening today. AI is going to do it. And I'm like, it's a bit of a stretch. But at least it gives you some kind of anchor, someplace you can start where you try to process what's going on around you. So when you watch that Japanese warring state thing that I'm talking about here with the chicks sleeping with everybody, and there's videos on there, you can look it up. You kind of look and you're like, oh, okay. So it's kind of some of the signs of bored women, infidelity, and that, you know, a lot more violence, a lot more women that are very creative, putting out creative work, and a lot of cheating. And then you realize, is this the kind of world I'm in? And you look, you're like, there's a lot of correlates. There's a lot of things here that kind of jive. Makes sense. So how do you act with that? Well, you know, kind of an enjoy the decline thing. I need things to go back to the way they were. Well, ask yourself this. In Japan, during the Warring State period, how did things go back to the way they were? I'll give you a hint. It wasn't pretty. And a lot of guys died. Then you start to realize, oh, so it's a demographic thing. Once there became way too few men for women, like I think it's like a 10% difference is all it takes, or 5%, something like that, that women actively change their behavior in order to accommodate men. And you just have to go, you could talk to like normal scientists. Now, there's a girl that was tweeting about this yesterday, 2 days ago. I can't remember where it is, but about how university campuses, on campuses where there's more men than women, the women are the biggest hookers ever. They just jump and pump and dump, and men here and men that, and it's great, and it's like gamer girls. But you go to campuses where there's a lot more women than there are men, what happens? Oh, girls find themselves a sweetheart. They settle down quick. They find their man, they lock onto him, and they keep him happy because they have to. Because if they don't, there's 3 bitches behind her that will. 3 bitches behind her. And it's kind of funny when you think about that. Then you realize, like, a lot of this stuff has nothing to do with, you know, our morals or our ethics or who we are as people or the decisions we make. It is an instinctive reaction to our environment based on our, you know, various, you know, whatever's in our DNA that tells us what to do. I don't know. And yes, we have some choice between that. I get that. I'm not saying it's everybody does this, but it does move that Overton window. It moves that bell curve towards this being a more likely scenario. I think I talked about that 2 or 3 podcasts ago, where you take the bell curve of men, you know, the top of the bell curve or the end of the bell curve is men that will thrive no matter what happens. And then at this side is the guys that aren't going to amount to shit and there's nothing you can do to save them. But most guys are in the middle, where it's kind of like you do your best in your environment and you muddle along. And that the way we're working now is that bell curve has shifted to the left. So and this is the small slivers of guys that are red pill. There's that group of guys that were just on the cusp of I could eke out a pretty good life and be happy with myself, that have now been pushed over to there's no chance you're never going to make it. Those guys absolutely benefit by red pill. The other side, the guys that were, they were just at the tail end of, doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to be fine. And they end up in this malaise of like potential, unrealized potential. And those guys benefit hugely from the red pill. Maybe at the top of the curve, those guys that were right at the very middle and now getting pushed over, there's little bits here and there that they can benefit from, but they don't need a lot. That's the small slivers of space that the red pill kind of encompasses. The middling guys that are just going to be middling guys, they don't care because good enough is good enough. I would take a 45% life, thank you very much. The guys that are going to thrive no matter what happens still, they don't need it because they're like, why do I need to know this? Just draw the fucking owl. And then the guys that ain't shit and they never are going to be shit and they weren't going to be shit even if things were the way they used to be, all they're going to do is ruin everything. There's a reason that they ain't going to do shit with their life, and that's because everything they touch turns to shit because every decision they make is the wrong one. And everything they do ruins it for everybody. So you just got to keep these guys as far away from you as possible because the one thing they love is company. So yeah. Anyways, critical thinking is not a skill. Ads? I don't know, man. Like I said, it's... Okay, side note. If you guys haven't gotten YouTube Premium, why don't you get it? There is 0 reason not to get it. I couldn't even... Like, here's the benefits from your side of things. For the phone app, no more ad. Like, you get no more ads. That's a big thing right there. No more ads. Well, I have an ad blocker. Yeah. But you listen to YouTube and you can have your phone off. So if you have a podcast on, you don't want to like kill your battery by watching it, just turn it off and it'll still play. It's great. Great for workouts, great for everything. You also get YouTube Music added onto it. So get rid of your Spotify account. It's the same cost. It doesn't even cost anything. YouTube has a much better musical selection. It has much better podcasts. It's just like, for me, the example I knew was this band called Tobacco. I love Tobacco. They're like this. I don't even know how to describe it. You listen to them. Super Gum by Tobacco. And you'll see it's like, what the hell is this? It's kind of like Beck meets heavy metal. I don't know how else to describe it other than that. But yeah, Spotify didn't have that. YouTube did. I'm like, oh, it's nice. From a creator standpoint, it turns out, and I don't know if the numbers are still correct, but if 10% of people that watch YouTube had YouTube Premium, they would never have to run an ad. Never. Like, that's how much better it is for creators if that many people were subscribing to YouTube Premium. So it's just amazing. Oh, yes, that's right. You can split it with your friends. Yeah, there's a... So I think you're allowed to use 3 different accounts for it, but I have like the big family one because I write it off as a business expense. So you can get like 5. And the thing is, I have 2 accounts. I have my Digital Ryan Gaming channel and I have the main Ryan Stone one, and then I guess my personal one. So 3 accounts. So I have like 2 accounts. I gave one to my girl. I gave one to my parents. I'm like, there you go. Have fun. So yeah, it's like, I don't understand it. There's literally no reason not to. And yeah, you can fight your ass off. Anyways, enough of that ad. I don't make any money from it either way. Although technically, if you all had YouTube Premium, I do believe the CPM is higher. That's the other thing. So a little bit of greed from me. But I mean, it's what? We had like, what, 10,000 views a video. So we're talking pennies here. Tekken for pennies. Back to Japan. And this is kind of why I enjoy this stuff, because then you'll see it and it'll give you something like that, like Japanese women in the Warring States period were cheating on their husbands insanely. That's a pretty provocative title, and it gets you on a deep dive and you kind of read through things. And obviously you're not trying to be an academic, so you're not memorizing stats, you're not saving things, but you kind of get the broad picture of information here. And this adds to that collection of information you get because you don't have critical thinking. What you have is a body of knowledge from which to draw on to make current decisions. Louis, $19.99 super chat. Thank you for the penny, sir. Actually, dude, that gives me an idea. The Tekken for pennies joke I'm going to make with Tate and then me playing Tekken is something to do with like $5 super chats and how we take the penny off for the super chats here, so I don't have to talk about the cuck article. There's a joke in there, and I just have to figure it out. If you guys figure it out, you let me know. Almost done reading the new book. I don't know if I'll ever be in a relationship, but I'll be ready. Thanks for the tools to help me become a greater man. No worries, man. That's actually pretty impressive. It's not a short book. I don't know if you guys, for those of you who don't have it, it is about 50% bigger or longer than Praxeology Volume 1. And there's a lot of case studies, and maybe it's because I've already read it 18 times, but I can't fucking stand it. And I don't see I see the words, but I don't read it anymore. It's hard to explain. It's almost like a technical thing. But yeah, smash like. And yeah, it's to be fair, when you first get into a relationship, you're probably not going to need it, because dread is there for guys who are being taken advantage of and dissatisfied. So if you're lucky, the stuff that you know is in there and the stuff that you know is in Volume 1 will make it so you never actually have to use it. It's kind of like when they tell you in martial arts training, the better you get at this, the less you're going to want to fight. And it's, yeah, you're that black belt, you know how to kick some ass, and you're like, yeah, I'm not picking fights at the bar. Why would I do that? Somebody's going to get hurt. Possibly me. Definitely that guy. Not a fan of it. You know, surprised. Well, I mean, because if you guys don't forget, Dread was the original book. That was the original plan. And as I was writing it, I had the outline out and I was starting to do it. I realized like it was hitting 100,000 words, 140,000 words. I'm like, this is way too big. Like you can't, when you write a book, you have to think of the audience experience. Like when you're reading a book, especially a nonfiction book, there is only so much information you can keep in your head and conceptualize at a single time. And once you cross that 80,000 word barrier with a book, it becomes, you lose a lot of the audience. Like they forget the beginning of the book when they're reading the end of the book. So you can have 140,000 word, essay or book on something, but people aren't going to know what's in it as they're reading it. It just ruins the experience. So I had to split it up into two. And the biggest concept other than dread in there was frame. So I'm like, all right, we'll make frame the first one and then finish off the book a second. So technically this is 2 years with like the preface book. It's twice as thick because adding women equals more complexity. Actually, I noticed the big part of it, and we had to cull a lot of it, was the case studies. That was the big part where I gave you guys examples, and it's awesome because like they're extreme examples. Alcoholic wife was a good one there, where the chick was just hooked on booze and hooked on pills, and the guy was like a pill popper and he got better, and his wife left him over that because she wanted an enabler. But I'm like, these extreme examples are a great way to illustrate a lot of the points in there. And like, that would never happen to me. I don't date those kind of girls. It's like, yeah, you don't. But if I explain those kind of girls, it's a subtle point and you're not going to get the point of it. You're like, well, why would I need to do this? She's only 5% bad. It's like, yeah, well, here's an example of 80% bad, so you can see why you'd have to do that. Oh, okay, I get it. It's like training. Whenever you're training for anything, you always train harder than what the actual event that you're training for is. Bro, I absolutely date those kind of girls. Matt Scroggins, $10 super chat. That is 2 heartfelt fuck you cuck articles. Sydney Watson, so happy that you're still talking about doing Tekken for pennies. I just want the ad. You'll cut for it. Heartfelt. Oh yeah, I guess it's now there's nothing in the way. The marketing for the book is mostly done. The book is mostly done. All I got left is in Christmassy time to start doing the audiobook and then develop the hardcovers, which I probably can do in between if there's a day my voice doesn't work. But I mean, that's busy work. And then all those things, for the last year, I've been telling you guys, like, oh yeah, I'm going to finish off the sidebar series on YouTube. I'm going to make some new vlogs. I'm going to continue on with the Substack, writing about case studies on totally different things than what it was in the books. And but I'll finish that after book 3. Well, as of next week, I'm after book 3. I actually got plans to go back on Zertis's podcast. I don't know if you guys remember that when I did like the conspiracy theory stuff on the Wednesday. The Canadian, having the guy from California and Wisconsin telling me about Canadian history. Like I didn't know about the train orphans and shit. So yeah, all that stuff's going to be great. I will say this, Derek, the 48 Laws of Power, I'll probably do that one last because everybody does the 48 Laws of Power. And it would be so derivative. I want to make sure that, like, there's two conflicting thoughts. One, I want to have something that accurately represents it in an applicable, actionable way. Like, how could I process this to utilize it better in my life, as opposed to like LARPing shit. But on the other side, well, if somebody else has already done that, then here's a second example of what you've already got. It's like, So we'll see how I square that circle. Nuclear Codolo. How's it going, sir? Hey, Codillo. What's up, guys? So anyways, we're back to what was I just on here about the Japan thing? Oh yeah, history, critical thinking. So yeah, so to sum it up, critical thinking isn't a skill. You can gain information based on a sphere of knowledge. And the more of that information you have, the better you're able to act within that sphere of knowledge. So this is why you guys are like, why is he so good at Red Pill? It's not because I'm good. It's not because I'm high IQ or any of that bullshit. It's just because I've read everything. And I can recall everything. And that's really it. And that's the beauty of it. This has like been the summary of me and Game talking to you guys since the start. If I can do this, anybody can do this. I am average. If you look at me, like jot down all my stats on paper, I am an average man. Average skin complexion, average eye color, average hair. I guess I'm not balding, so that makes me above average, whatever. Average height, average weight. There's nothing exceptional about me. And yet I can carve out, and fuck files, it's not a brag, but it's not like everything in there is true. Sometimes I'll mix up, like if there was 2 different girls, but they had a similar thing to it, I'll mix them into one for the story, but everything in there happened. So, everything in there happened. And if I can do it, you can do it. There's no way you can't do it. A lot of you guys are 6 feet tall. A lot of you guys have 6-pack abs. Some of you have 6-figure salaries. Some of you have all 3. Some of you have another 6. What's the other 6 to have? Ryan is me with hair. Gray hair at that. It all grays. I'm getting my spots. My spots are graying a little bit. Was Rush's 30 Bang similar to Fuck Files? Oh, I don't know. I've never read 30 Bang. I know Bang, which it isn't. Honestly, if I had to compare Fuck Files to anything, I'd probably say it's closer to the game, but it's not. Like, you know how the game was, it wasn't a book about game, it was a book about the guys who did game, the mystery method stuff. Take that and then mesh that, synthesize that with Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. You know, here's the game aspect and here's the lessons for life that came from it, right? And then I have a little bit of Bukowski's Women in there, which was, you know, usurping, like everybody's like, alpha males must do this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, fuck that. That's ridiculous. And that's just going to cause a lot of mental hardship and a lot of alcoholism. And so I kind of took those 3 ideas and put them together in there. That's it. Now, it's my first book. Going back, I'll probably cringe, but whatever. Once you have all 3, chicks just call you a misogynist. That's not bad. Is it wrong to call Roosh a has-been? I mean, call Roosh what you want. I'm not the one who's making a thing. Anyways, I am rambling, and we are going to talk about Victorian era stuff. What's my time? We'll do 40 minutes on the dot. Since we're talking about the Victorian area, let's get that boy that does the chimney sweeping.
sounds very paranoid to me. Like, Still Reed is quite paranoid to me, but it does screams a little bit of somebody who is very paranoid on anyone. I think I do think there's an element of suspicion. Like, if you are feeling a certain level of vulnerability, that I think this guy definitely is.
She was talking about Rich, by the way. I'm like, dude, leave him alone. You made an ad from Lady Magic? I make little ads and clips from everybody. That's technically not the ad, though. The ad was... Where is she? I actually have it on here. This is the ad.
We know that these videos really prey on vulnerable young men who have not had many experiences in dating.
That's the ad. She hates me, by the way. But I mean, to be fair, until somebody hates me, I don't make an ad on them. I'm like, I don't like burning those bridges. I don't like encouraging, like, hey, come on my podcast so I can make an ad making fun of you and show it off for 2 years. I think that's ridiculous. I always wait for them to fire first. You fire first, or you drew first blood, not me. You drew first blood, not me. I'll bring you a war you'll never... That's from Rambo. Rich owns half the trades in Canada. I doubt he's offended. No, he's not. When we talk about this stuff, he's always like, I just don't give a fuck. I really don't. He's true entrepreneur, like tried and true. He looks at everything that happens on, is this something that's going to help my business make money? And if not, he just completely disregards it. Completely. It's actually pretty impressive. So now we're talking about Victorian, I want to say France or England. I'll just call it Victorian. Arguably the most Puritan time in Western European history. Everybody was chaste. Nobody did any diddling. People were prudish. And a lot of shit was going on. Absinthe bars. That was my first part. Absinthe bars. You guys know absinthe? Absinthe is a liquor that they make from this special little thing. And it's kind of a little hallucinogenic. A little bit. It's not anymore because they got rid of that part. They DTHC'd the absinthe, and now it's just a cool green liquor. And they used to pour it over sugar cubes, like burn it, like freebase it and shit and drink it and all like that. Now, everybody was into it. So they had these absinthe bars. These absinthe bars, people would sit around and drink absinthe and get high and smoke opium and that kind of shit. I don't know why I got such an itchy nose right now. Sazerac, yeah. And what would happen is they would start jerking each other off in these absinthe bars in the corners. Diddling girls. Wait, they were finger blasting each other at the bar? Oh, yes. I'm not going to say this like it was happening everywhere, but in the same way there's bars now where girls are shaking their booty. Imagine this. People dressed as like a Jane Austen novel, finger blasting each other high off of absinthe and opium. Yeah. The prudish Victorian era socialization and its consequences have been a curse to mankind we couldn't realize centuries later. I mean, it's the same thing as Japan. It's just the environment at the time. Everybody was socially stilted, and so they had to have an outlet. And then they have all these like socially acceptable places to do this. There was tons of cheating going on, but it was all very subtle because you had to maintain your gentlemanliness. And girls would wear bustiers to like make their tits look a lot bigger. They'd tell me if this sounds familiar. They used to bleach their skin to seem whiter because anybody who worked in the fields was one of the poors. They used to powder horsehair wigs because then the lighter, wispier hair was seen as more distinguished and more attractive. What are you guys talking about? It's so funny when Ryan talks American. What the hell does that even mean? How do I talk? Actually, I don't even know what that means. As opposed to talking Canadian? Fucking rights, bud. Yeah, I can do either. Tanza for poor people. Yeah. Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. And that was the point of that one too. And there's actually a whole thing. I used to be hooked on this. There was a Twitter account that used to talk about, there was a Victorian sex museum. And then a whole bunch of research and papers. And I had like a deep dive into there for a while. Same as the Japan. I couldn't recall like facts and figures and dates on here, but it was very interesting. Like doctors were handing out cocaine and vibrators for women with hysteria. Women with hysteria, and tell me if this will sound familiar later on. Women with hysteria? Well, better diddle you with a vibrator, give you some cocaine, and send you on your way. You get this coked up chick who just had a fresh orgasm, goes to the absinthe bar, blasts a dude in the thing, goes home, sleeps with the help. Like, Jesus. Kind of almost like Sparta, which is funny. They had those what did they call them? Helots? The Helot revolts every now and then. So the guys would go out to war, the women would run the farms with their slaves. And then I guess women were diddling a lot of slaves, and it had a lot of diddling slave kids. So the guys would come back after war and just murder everybody. There, start clean. Got that cheating Helot out of the way, his cheating Helot kids, and now let's go back to being great Spartan people. And the women, they were just like, technically they got the purse strings in divorce, so they had all the money, so they had to kind of like just pretend it didn't happen. Kind of a big Victorian too. Thanks to Ryan, I'm learning the Canadian language. Just don't do Aussie, please. Yeah, I can't do much with Aussie. It's just too weird. It's too weird. I can't do Aussie. I can't do British. Syphilis, opium. Oh yes, a lot of syphilis. And that was kind of the point where people were like noticing how quickly syphilis was running through the population. And that was kind of how they understood, oh, there's a lot of like going on here. I'm on the fence about buying your book. Is there a way to run dread on a female boss? Are you trying to fuck your female boss? I'm going to strongly suggest this Derek for real guy don't talk and chat anymore, because that's really silly. And so again, back to the theme of the things, you kind of see this is going on, and like it's weird. You have a lot of girls. I mean, there's Indian girls that bleach their skin. Do you guys know this? There's a lot of that going on. I've had a lot of Indian friends. They're having weddings and like 1 year family or birthday parties for the kids. And I've noticed this. Maybe it's a Sikh thing, maybe it's an Indian thing, but they are living today the way that the evil, rich, white, waspy villains lived in the 80s. You know? Like a 2-year-old birthday party, but there's like clowns and events and bouncy castles, and everybody comes in, you're dressed to your tie nines, and the catered event, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Jesus. The wedding photos, everything has to be very waspy. You know, the girls are bleaching their skin. Impossible to hate you. Yeah, it's impossible to hate you. Now it makes sense why women are so much less flirty black in Houston. Been in Virginia a week, and the women are already more pleasant. Yeah, well, pleasant because they have to be. That's why small towns, the people are always more pleasant. I mean, first off, it's a small town. You're going to get more pleasantries there. But there is a lot less men to choose from. When you're in a bigger city, there's a lot, like the ratio of top tier men and bottom tier men is about the same as a small town. But if you're in a city of 1 million people, there's like 100,000 top tier men that the 1 million ladies can go fighting over, as opposed to a small town where there's like 10 top tier men that 100 ladies have to go over. And that smaller scale makes the competition more acute. And the other one, you can rely on arbitration. You know, working in a small town, they're much better here. Yeah, I mean, better in some ways, worse in the others. That's the other problem too. If somebody goes sleeping around, the town finds out instantly. In larger cities, you can kind of get away with stuff if that's what you're into. So yeah, the Victorian ladies, there was that. There is a lot of the diddling and the coke. What was the other one that they put into there? The porn. What do you mean? Oh, dude, there was so much Victorian era porn. They had comics. They had cartoons. They had the literary stuff there. They even started having motion pictures. You know these ones? They used to be... You'd see that one where it was like, if you ever go to San Francisco, they have like a little arcade down by the water, and they have like 1860 like video games. You're like, oh, this is so much fun. You get to put that pig in the pig hole. But there was this one thing where it's like a rotating disc, and it's got a slit going through it. And as you stare through it, on the other end of the disc is pictures, and you can like do this, and you see a horse running. So they had porn versions of this, you know, thrust, 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 and you're spinning around. You're like, oh my God. So it turns out the only difference between then and now is instead of absinthe, we got people on ketamine or fentanyl or whatever drug of the day it is. Girls on SSRIs. instead of bleaching our skin and horsehair wigs, well, they're still bleaching their skin, but there's the lip filler and all this other stuff. This stuff that arguably you're like, this doesn't make women more attractive, but it kind of does, because otherwise they wouldn't do it. It's a fucking weird thing. And instead of like very hard to access or, you know, that porn, now it's just digital and that. So all the stuff is still there. It's the same stuff that's always been. But now that you've got that little bit of history knowledge into, even if it's not great, even if it's not, well, that was from 1876, not 1875, and the dresses were like, you don't need that autistic level of shit, right? But you kind of remember, oh, okay, so that's how things were in the Victorian period. So when you see it happening now, it's not, oh my God, the degenerate West is in its last days. It's the fall of Rome. And you're like, actually, it's kind of the Victorian era. And then things happened, and then it kind of went away, and it was just a phase, and things got more Puritan. And then things got more liberal. And then and this is the weirdest part, when things got more liberal, they tended to be more stable. But then it became too liberal. And then the Puritans, the ones who basically lose out on it. And this is like it is. It's a constant cat and mouse game. It's similar to Rollo's story about the alpha and beta chimps, right? There's always in chimps, there's always like the one head chimp who sleeps with all the women. And then the other chimps get a little bit of play, you know, if they bring her bananas and shit. So the big chimps are able to beat up small chimps, but they can't beat up all the small chimps. So what the small chimps figured out is, hey, if we team up, we could beat the shit out of this big chimp, and then we could take all these girls for ourselves. Now, big chimps aren't stupid. They're big, but they're not stupid. And they realized, well, that's kind of bad. I don't want to get small chimps beating me up. So what do? Well, hey, guys, you can have some of the girls. I'm going to keep most of the girls, the best girls, but you can have some of the girls. And then, you know, the small chimps get just enough to be happy and not to want to rebel and beat up the big chimp. And the big chimp still gets all his bitches, but he's missing some of the shittier bitches. You know, everybody wins. It's kind of the same thing here in a very broad sense. I'm not trying to say we're chimps. If anything, I think we're bonobos, but whatever. We're very Puritan because guys who are sexually frustrated like to make their necessity a virtue. And then what happens is enough people are tired of it, and so they liberalize the landscape. And then everything is well for a while. And then what happens is people start getting more liberal with the landscape, and then you get that hypergamous thing where the top of men get all the women, you know, the 80-20 rule. Now what happens is that bottom 80% of men are sexually frustrated to the point where, societally speaking, they beat up the big chimp. And that's where that super Puritan stuff comes in. And then it goes completely the other direction. So it's kind of like that circle theory that they talk about and things. It actually kind of makes sense there. Obviously, the environment changes things. As things become more prudish, it's usually because things are also harder on a survival level. Now, what does this have to do with sex and that? Not much. Again, this is one of those episodes where like a broader understanding of knowledge, especially history, even if it comes from art, because some idiot guy was like, hey, I could totally fuck girls after I take them to a museum and show off how artistic I am. Even that is sometimes all it takes. You don't have to be there by some stodgy professor with the pipe reading the ancient tomes or the old Sanskrit scrolls. No, you can get there because I pick up girls. I'm going to learn a library game. I'm going to pick up girls at the library. How do you do that? Well, I better learn some books. Hey, turns out these books taught me a lot about sex toys in the Victorian era. You thought the torture devices were crazy. Wait till you see these things. Chastity belts and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's me, library game, dude. Governor, you read? I'm impressed, sir. I thought you would have been more breakdancing game with your DDR skills. And so you see the Victorian era. And again, it's a lot of the same things. Girls doing like lightening body augmentation. Sex and cheating, like very repressed society in that. And Japan, if you want a modern example, just go to Japan. Guys are absolute workaholics, at least the older generations. I think the younger ones have kind of given up on that. Stagflation, welcome to it. But they were worked to death, and the idea is you had to be at work longer than the boss. You know, schools, there used to be stories of kids that were getting crushed in the gates at school because, like, if you were late, they just shut you out of school, and the shame was horrible. And so kids would try to scream in, and they'd shut the gates on them and crush the kid. Like, that's how repressed they are. And then what does Japan do about it? We have an entire billion-dollar industry in Japan of tentacle porn. How do I know this? Well, Kurt Eichenwald, that guy that hated Trump, You know, like the 5 guys who made their living being paid by the CIA to reply guy to everything Trump said? Well, he was one of them. And then people kept sending him a stupid meme. I don't remember what the meme was, but it was something to do. Oh, somebody said he had seizures or like epileptic or something. So they started sending him flashing lights. And then he went on pretending to be his wife. It's like, this is Kurt Eichenwald's wife. He's got a seizure now and he's hurt real bad. You guys are big, fat, meanie heads. Everybody's laughing at him. Like, hey, eat another seizure, bitch. Whatever. Anyway, he went to do some live stream. This is totally a nonsensical story, but I just love it. It's my favorite story, and it's the only reason I know who Kurt Eichenwald is. I don't know what he does. I don't know his claim to fame. This is the vasectomy tweet did to Rolo's notoriety, as Kurt Eichenwald did with tentacle porn. So he's on some live stream. He has his Brave or Chrome browser open, and all the tabs are up top, and everybody's watching him. He's like, this is why Trump is degenerate, and Trump is evil, and Trump is this, and Trump is that. And then, of course, autists, if you ever see a reflection, like, what's in the reflection? If you ever see a internet browser, like, what's on the tabs? And then they saw this Japanese, like, term, and they're like, what the hell is this? I'm going to look it up. I'm sure they already knew, but, I mean, they looked it up. And like, oh, this is a Japanese tentacle porn anime series, OVA. Original Video Animation, I think is what the acronym stands for. And they're like, hey, Kurt, what's with all the tentacle porn, bro? And he's like, well, and this is like when you deering, never deer. This is why. He's like, well, you see, tentacle porn is as bad as Trump. So I was showing it to my kids because I'm like, guys, this is tentacle porn. You never want to look at this stuff, which is so much worse. So he got dragged for like a year. Is he even around anymore? Let me go see. I don't know how to spell it. I'm not good at German, but Kurt Eichenwald? He's still here. Dude, and you look at his photo, he looks like he's in shape and he looks like he's a fat fuck now. Senior investigative editor, The Conversation, New York Times bestselling author, veteran of New York Times and Newsweek, on Post.News. My account name is the same. It is here. KurtEichenwald.com. You notice nowhere in here. Oh, my takes on MAGA menace, right-wing extremism, QAnon, and other Trumpian cults. What's his take on tentacle porn? Maybe I should tweet that and get him banned. But you see what I mean? It's amazing. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. I just like telling that story. I've told it like 5 times, and it gets funnier to me every time. It's like, talk about, well, this is bad, but how can I make it worse? Are you watching tentacle porn, dude? Which, whatever, bad enough. No. I was showing it to my children. What? No. I was showing it to my children to tell them never to watch this. What? No. Trump's bad, I swear to God. The craziest thing is he's still posting about Trump, by the way. He's been out of office for like 4 years or 8 years or however many years he's been out of office. Like, he can't hurt you anymore, dude. He's now making a living as a tentacle porn mod. I wouldn't doubt it. It's like Alex Jones being caught watching trans porn with the tab open in the background during his live show. These guys wagging their finger off and live double lives. Is that just a hypothetical? Or was Alex Jones actually watching Chicks with Dicks 7, the Electric Boogaloo? Because that would be funny too. What is tentacle porn? I mean, I thought it seemed obvious. It's like, think of how phallic a tentacle is. Do the math. I've never watched one, and I'm not just saying this to be like, I would never. I just, for some reason, some things don't interest me. I don't like the idea of tentacles, and I don't need to see chicks crying naked. I don't like either one of them, so whatever. Trump made my kids watch tentacle porn, and of course I'm not gonna. Jesus. Don't you think the principles of creating a sincere family are opposite from the organization of modern dating? Well, Tiffany, actually, that's a real question, so we'll get with this one. This is like an is versus ought conversation. So you want to create a sincere family. I don't know what a sincere family means. What does it mean that a family is sincere? There's something I talk about often. It's called container words. And it's the idea is you take a word, usually an adjective, you throw it in front of something. A sincere family. What does sincere mean? Well, you have a box, you wrote sincere on it. You fill it with all kinds of hopes and dreams and values and whatever. You tape it shut, you put it at my feet, you're like, there it is. Now I have my own box with sincere written on the front. I got my own things on here. So we have 2 different boxes, and we're sitting here arguing with each other over the box because our boxes are different. We're talking about completely different things. And I think a lot of, now if you want to actually talk and collaborate and find out what's the best way to do it, we're probably going to be talking past each other, and it devolves really quickly. But yeah, sincere family, I would argue, and this is the way I prefer to frame it, it came from Ian Ironwood's Praxeology of the Dominant Man, the inspirational post that's 2 books in, the Praxeological Man. If I ever decide to leave, I'm leaving the manosphere. Praxeology, some play on the word praxeology, will be the term of the concept that I come up with, which it is pretty much red pill, praxeological. How do you live in a family unit that creates maximum happiness for all? And that's, I like that one. Now I'm going to argue, I know Rollo talks about, what are they, proximal and whatever, like the temporary short-term happiness and long-term contentment. I kind of use this as a very loose way to describe both, so I get it. So yeah, a sincere family, the way I would describe that is like the praxeological family, maximum happiness for all. That means kids aren't necessarily happy. Happy is like, I get to eat ice cream every day. Happiness in this sense is these kids are raised to be good adults. They may have to do things they don't like. They may cry, if dad spanks them, but it's for their own good, that kind of thing, right? Just because it's good for them doesn't mean it makes them happy, but it is good for them. Same thing with the wife, same thing with the husband. Guys are already pretty good at sacrificing. The wife, same thing. Like, really, really controversial way of putting this. Like, cheating always comes up when it's saying, oh, a woman would never put up with that. Well, some do. Some women know they can't keep their man happy, and they're like, as long as he doesn't embarrass me, they're fine with it, right? And I'm not saying that is the de facto like model that everybody needs to do that. Man, mistress, wife, happy. What I am saying is that kind of unit can work if you understand the underlying principle here. So the woman is attracted to a certain lifestyle. She's attracted to a certain family unit, and she is very attracted to having a good reputation as a good wife amongst her peers, her family, and her society writ large. So if a guy decides to embarrass her by sleeping with her cousin or somebody from work that they find out about, that embarrasses her. That goes up against like a core principle, what the girl actually values. And this is kind of one of those mutual value exchanges that I say is important in a relationship. Because a lot of guys, what they do is they give girls things they value. I value this, therefore you'll value this. It's the golden rule. I would love I would love having a stable girl that doesn't do anything, like doesn't drama and is content and whatever. And I'm going to give her that. But that makes her bored. She doesn't actually value that. She likes an exciting man. She likes a man that other girls would want and would take in a heartbeat, and he could have them, but he chooses her. That's what she wants. So if you start playing, instead of wanting or offering what I value, offer what she values. And same thing for her. And it's a very difficult thing because you essentially have to get out of your own head. Women have to stop being solipsistic and guys have to stop being ego driven and really think about this. Is this girl valuable to me? Girls sexually available, has the kids, she doesn't fuck them up like that Munchausen syndrome tweet I did yesterday about the chick who's like, the kid's autistic and doesn't like to eat or shower and we need to give him therapy and pills. And then dad just sat down with his kids and just, oh, the tub is too cold, that's why he doesn't like to shower. Or he doesn't like to bathe. Oh, the kid doesn't like to eat? Well, I'm just not letting him play with his toys till he eats. All of a sudden now he eats in that. And the mom had wasted like a year of therapy. So yeah, if she's not that kind of chick, if she's not doing the Munchausen by proxy bullshit and she's doing this, and yeah, she's doing everything you've wanted as in a wife. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you sacrifice the occasional thing to make her happy? Let her do something to flex on her friends. You understand that? Like Valentine's Day, small example. Buying a girl flowers, yeah, it's Valentine's Day. That's simp stuff. It is. But let's say you got the great woman. Let's say she's everything you wanted. Let's say she's giving you everything. She's giving you 100%. And you're loving it. You're just like, oh, this is great. What do you do at Valentine's Day? You get a big ostentatious display of flowers with a note, send it to her office, have it delivered to the front desk. So the girls at the front desk have to deliver it to her office. There's the whole, oh my God, look at this. This girl is getting doted on. And it's like the social flex. And that's like an appeal for it, right? So it's not even about being a simp or pimp. It's about understanding the consequences of your actions. And yeah. So I don't think there is principles of creating a sincere family unit. I think a lot of people have their own underlying instincts that they pretend are values, and they're usually based on necessities or what their parents taught them, which may or may not be any good. As far as the organization of modern dating, I don't even know what the fuck that means. I don't know what the organization of modern dating is. What, because of Tinder? Tinder ruined dating? Wow. Before Tinder, there was OkCupid and internet dating. Oh, that didn't count. Well, there used to be Facebook chat for that. Well, that didn't count either. For that, there was like VHS tapes. There used to be speed dating events. There was always some way of men and women to get together. They had sock hops. All this stuff. But yeah, the organization of modern dating. You know what that is? The people who complain. And Tiffany, I don't mean to put you on blast here, but I kind of do. The organization of modern dating, that's a skill issue. Women are dating a bunch of men. They don't want to settle down with them. The girls are getting frustrated and they get fucking sad and they start drinking. Like, I would be more inclined for sympathy if the girl took some self-awareness, looked at it. What am I doing that I only attract this certain type of guy? Am I going to the place where this certain type of guy is? Is that the only place I go? Am I seemingly, my loins attracted to that certain type of guy? Maybe the issue is what I think I want and what I respond to are not the same things. So it's time to do some work. Do I actually want a guy? Or do I actually want this guy? And girls don't make that self-awareness. Guys don't either, to be fair. More often than not, guys just play the field and then eventually one girl tries really hard to lock them down and then they just give up. They lay aside. It's that endurance hunting. You ever see that one where the African guys, they chase the deer for like 5K? And it turns out deer can run really fast, but they can't do a 10K. So they just chase them for 10K, and then by the end of the 10K, the thing's so tired it lies down, and they just stab it and take it back. That's kind of how girls lock down guys. He was actually caught watching it back in 2017 and went real silent on the entire trans issue for a while. Oh boy, that's funny. Thank you, certified sociopath. Yeah, so I don't know, and that's the problem I have, because this is an online space, and I know it's very easy to get sucked into the online conversations, and the one thing about the online conversations, they're so detached from reality. Like this whole thing that Tiffany is saying here, I guarantee you is that is because some podcaster told her about this. The Sincere Family. There's probably 500 trad girl accounts talk about sincere family principles. Well, what is that? Well, it's baking and cooking. Is it fucking your husband on the regular? No. That's crude. We don't talk about that. It's like Victorian era shit, right? And that's why I don't like it. Because you got this detached from reality, moral puritanism, that you have to have a sterile environment where the husband and wife call each other mom and dad. They never kiss in front of the kids because that would turn them into hookers. And then you end up with dads fucking prostitutes on the side or signing up for OnlyFans girls. The girls schlepping everybody in the church. Ask me how I know. This is shit that's happened. Guy I know, married to like the main church marm. She was fucking everybody. But she was the most pious and holy girl you ever thought. She had the greatest, she'd talk at length about sincere family principles or whatever the fuck. She was an absolute drunken degenerate. So yeah, here's the thing. If you're going to be honest about this stuff, that's the problem, is that honesty comes at a price. And it comes at the price that you lose your fantasies. You kind of have to grow up. You don't have to believe in the Disney fantasy anymore. There's a concept, by the way, in the red pill called the Disney fantasy, which is it's due for an overhaul because it doesn't get brought up nearly enough. Most people have zero experience and they build their worldview on abstract things based on what media is showing them. Yes, including some asshole staring at a screen in a camera ranting about how women ain't shit. Or girls like, yes, I have a sundress and a summer hat and this is what a good man will do. And you're just like, fuck it. Thank you. Proximate goals and ultimate goals. Chimps, sociopaths, sincere family principles, 5 love languages. And I'm not even like to defend Tiffany here. Not that she needs it, but the aim is sincere. She wants to be happy. She wants, again, ultimate goals. Ultimate goal, to be happy, to be with a good man that she's really into, and have a stable family over the long term. A sustainable level of happiness, an ultimate goal. So that is fine. The issues I have are with the details, the process to get there, the language used to describe it, the framework that you're given. I don't like any of the stuff that girls have ever done in that, at least online, because I don't find it to be useful. The closest I found was Allie. And yeah, I'm simping for Allie. That's fine. I guess she's not a single mom right now, but she's a mom. She's dating a dude 20 years older. She used to be in the military. She's kind of like that, a reformed feminist kind of idea, right? And like she kind of caught on. She's not stupid. She understood her dilemma. She understood her gifts. It's that Sun Tzu thing. If you know yourself and know your enemy, you'll win 100 battles before you even draw a sword or whatever. I remember what MLD said about hairdressers, women named... yeah, MLD talks about a lot of things. Love that guy, but he talks about a lot of things. Hey, what's up, Pupper? So this is why I have issue with that. You back to the Victorian era, and the more you pretend that we are above human nature, that we're above, like, we're not animals, we're divine creatures. Well, divine creature just finger banged your wife drinking absinthe at the opium bar. Like, I don't know what to tell you, sir. Well, how crude. It's crude. Oh, it's very crude, but it's honest. And as much as I would love to live a society on a lie, I don't think that's a very good way to do it. I'm not saying you have to be all of a sudden talking about this at work. There's tact, like there's times and places for conversations, but on a red pill podcast talking about fucking, this is the one place you can talk about absinthe finger banging and not worry about it, right? What does Allie do for me? Nothing really, to be honest. And here, so we're off topic again here, but whatever. I have nothing but patience. I've time and patience. There's a lot of like brands in the red pill space, the other spaces, female spaces, nothing but time for them. I've learned a little bit about how to run a business online and do this stuff and the branding and that. And if somebody looks to be sincere about what they're trying to do, they have a body of work that they desperately want to get out there. They have knowledge that they definitely want to do. They have a topic they definitely want to cover and all this stuff. More than happy to help them out with anything. And that's all I ask is just like, don't be an ass model of Instagram. Don't be one of those grifty types. If you're not a grifty type, I got nothing but time and patience for you. Usually. I mean, sometimes I'm just too busy. But yeah. Yeah, there's quite a few girls I enjoy their content. There's her, there's Ginger Gal, which is another Canadian. She lives down in Costa Rica now and that too. I kind of did a tweet on that. It's like, hey, do you ever notice most of these red pill guys? We get along fine with all kinds of women. You know, welders, prostitutes, porn stars, church girls, doesn't matter. The only ones we don't like are cunts. Just don't be a cunt. That's all you have to do. Rolo will chill out with you. Hey, how's it going? It's nice to see you again. Let me help you push your book. Or I'll chill and do this. And Troy and all this stuff. All you have to do is just not be a cunt. And then all these girls are like, these guys are so misogynist. Like, no, you're just a cunt. I don't know what else to tell you. Maybe if you were pleasant and a human being and not some angry broad with a chip on her shoulder and daddy issues, maybe if you got that pony when you were 8, this wouldn't be happening. But it is happening. Good sir, would you please? So the Victorian area, and you get these things together, it teaches you a lesson. That, the Japanese thing, the tentacle porn, we're circling back. We're circling back. You kind of realize a couple, I almost want to call them like guidelines. I don't know what the best word for that is. I'd have to look. Yeah, don't be a cunt, don't be a Billy, basically. Understand that the more you distance yourself from your own base desires, the more those base desires come out in equally destructive ways. And case in point, Jack Murphy. Jack Murphy, and I don't hate the guy. I guess he was doing some real estate grifts, and then he started doing manosphere grifts and that. He was very unknowledgeable about the space. He was like, I'm going to write a history of the manosphere. I'm like, you mean like this book? And I sent him Ian Ironwood's Manosphere, A New Hope for Humanity. He's like, yeah, like that one. I'm like, all right, good luck. It's already done. That's your competition. So he never did. He was sitting there talking about family values and this and that and the other thing. But what was his real life situation? His wife divorced him and took the kids, kicked him out of baseball practice because he slept with a girl. And then he had like a thing. He had a little kink where he didn't have one-itis. I don't want to have one-itis for my girl, so I'm going to just play the field. He's a divorced guy in his 40s. Of course he's going to play the field. Of course he's going to sleep with all kinds of strange. Of course he's used to having a girl at home base who's going to keep it there. Yeah, he's going to live that kind of lifestyle. And I remember this too, when he was talking about it, he was worried about it. I'm like, dude, who cares? Like, look, you've done everything you were supposed to do. You went to church, you raised a family, you got a good job, and they took it all from you. You've given your pound of flesh to everybody. And if you want to be like, you know what? I'm going to fuck some strange and then break bread with a girlfriend on the weekends, and there's nothing you can do about it. I have still done more and better and good things with my life than you ever will. Now, granted, he went a different direction. He decided, no, I'm going to yell at Sydney Watson instead, and then do a lot of gay porn, which I don't know. There's another. I don't know if this is common knowledge yet, but there is a certain very large brand in the red pill that's got some photos floating around of like this stuff, and I was like, what the hell? Like, I'm not surprised, whatever. But I just find it funny that every time there's a big cargo cult that their traditional conservative members always use, oh my God, he was kissing a man. Oh my God, he shoved a dildo up his ass, or any of this stuff. And they take this as like a carte blanche excuse to watch gay porn for 3 weeks, for research. And I'm just like, dude, what the hell? Well, Jack Murphy's doing this stuff, I have to watch it. You're like, no, you don't. All right, I get it. He did some pay for play, hetero flexible stuff. That's as much as I need to know. Granted, there's been some hilarious memes coming out of it, but I don't want to see those either. I draw the line. Goatsy is fine, but the Jack Murphy videos, that's where I draw the line. So I guess there was like some Tate ones. There's been some other ones. I don't know how common that one is, so I won't bring up the third name, but yeah. And there's a bunch of like teenage kids watching Tate jerk off on camera, and I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sakes, dudes. Really? But here's the point. That you start acting morally Puritan, that all of this stuff kind of bubbles underneath the surface, and then it comes out in these super destructive ways. Meanwhile, you got guys like Rollo or me or, Troy, all these guys, we're very open and upfront and honest about our everythings. Like, we're just human. It's what we do, right? Stable relationships, or what was the, oh wait, I gotta look up the word. Where'd she go? Tiffany, I'm borrowing yours. A sincere family. All of us. Well, just not Troy, but Troy never claimed to want one. Sincere family units. Very happy. Girl makes me candy. She bakes bread. She got a new sourdough Le Creuset machine. It's like a big cast iron Dutch oven, but it's upside down. I don't know what the fuck to do with it. Happy. Families. Laughing, loving, healthy sex lives. Meanwhile, you have the other people that are living that Victorian degenerates with the organizing thing of this thing, and then they're just blowing each other in the back room. Pick a side. I would much rather be honest with yourself and with your capabilities and your limitations and the failings of the human body and the human condition, and live as good a life as you can, navigating those as best you can with honesty and sincerity, than living this double life. And as soon as the double life comes out, that's what the canceling is. Jack Murphy got canceled because he shoved something up his ass and yelled at a girl. I yell at girls all the time. Nobody cares. I've never shoved something up my ass. But I'm sure I could weather that too if I had to. Never mind. Honesty requires experience and reflection. And that, there, Weinmer, please, nailed it. Cuts to the main point. Once you start understanding historically how these things work, right? Like the Japanese period, the Victorian age, Japan's culture, you start building yourself a body of knowledge. And then that body of knowledge is the skill set that you would normally call creative thinking. But it's not creative thinking, or it's not, is that the word I was supposed to be using? Critical thinking. It's not critical thinking. Critical thinking doesn't exist. It's just knowledge. And that's why I make an effort when I do these, and I'm rambly as shit today, so I get it. Normally, I'm more on point with like a lesson plan, proper thing, and I've got my lesson plan here. Going a little off script, but whatever. The point is, as you learn more about this stuff, you get to make better decisions. So everybody who's sitting here talking about high IQ, critical thinking, blah, 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 you're like, yeah, I just know shit. I just learn things, and the more things I learn, the more I realize the things that I learned from the past are things that are applicable today, and it helps. Even from a branding perspective, same thing. Actually, you know what? We might segment right there. What's our time? 1:18. Let's make fun of somebody.
One of the guys who ran the Red Pill channel sent me a message. I actually appreciate that you took it from an idea-based perspective instead of ever resorting to personal attack. Like, if this movement is actually going to be dangerous, do we need to understand it so that we can take it down? I knew going into it that this might be a hot mess. I'm not going to have those guys back on my channel again. Absolutely not.
If I asked, she'd have me back on her channel. You just know it. I don't know. Yeah, the branding thing. And it's meta. I get it. It's meta. But it's the same thing. So before Rolo or me or any of the guys that you guys know are surrounded with me and my space and my thing and whatever, we were watching other guys. We were watching Gavin McInnes. We were watching Yiannopoulos, Stefan Molyneux, those kind of people. And before them, there was like Tony Sotomayor. There was Karen Strawn. There was Paul Elam. There was the Honey Badgers. And before them, there was, can't even think of who would have been before them. But that's the point, right? There's always been some idiot here staring at the guy. I'm basically the Stefan Molyneux. Welcome to Free Domain Radio. By the way, did you know that phrenology is real? Like, I get it. The 1984 vibes from this, I understand. Yeah, Dangerous Movement. That one makes me laugh the most. This Dangerous Movement is killing kids. It's like, is it though? We had Red Hill Superheroes before El Presidente ruined. Oh, everybody ruins it. There's always a ruining. Myron ruined it. Pearl ruined it. Tate ruined it. El Presidente ADJ ruined it. Before him, Milo Yiannopoulos ruined it, and all those cokeheads doing the things before them. There's always somebody ruining something. Before them, it was GLO ruining things. There's always a bunch of people ruining things. It's just what people do. They suck at keeping things together. Fuck, that's a classic. I forgot. You know what? I got to give him a shout out. I love this goofy bastard with his swamp
Boom,
kids.
what's up, fam? Got some big news to share that unfortunately is not so good. So I'm gonna jump right into it. You're gonna watch this video and you're gonna cry. At least we can laugh at your eyes as you cry, looking in the corner like a little girl in the fetal position.
And no, Dev, I did not forget your super chat. I was staring at it right now. $5 1 cent super chat. I saw it there and I'm like, when's a good time to hit it? But you're pressuring me, so here we are. Nobody's touching grass. People are talking in the abstract. Nobody wants to be trad. Feminism works for me. I love church girls and chicks at raves. Dude, church girls and chicks at raves. I like that. That'd be like, that's right up there with Tekken for pennies on like really good, well-termed phrase. Yeah, nobody wants to be trad. Trad doesn't exist. Thank you very much, madam. Damn straight, kiddos. A little bit of boomer juice to get us through the day. Yeah, your woman's loyal, but does she bring you sugar-free, zero-calorie Red Bull for your podcast talking about masculinity? I didn't think so. Get good, chumps. Yeah, and that's kind of the big problem here, is right? Because this is abstract talking is how the culmination of the critical thinking types. Critical thinking is a massive skill. Destiny is the perfect. I hate the guy. I hate his brand. I hate him as a person. I just don't like anything about that. I don't like his hair color. I wasn't even a huge fan of the Smurfs. Okay? But that's the point. The talking in the abstract. That's how you get people like, imagine. That's why I always hate, I was ranting there for a while. Like, I hate when people start their tweet with, imagine blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, not imagine. It's something I learned as a joke in school. I was taking the LSATs, which is like the main test to see if you can become a lawyer. I did pretty well. Which, I mean, it doesn't mean shit until you pass the bar. A law degree doesn't mean shit, and the LSAT doesn't mean shit. But it's step one. And the one piece of advice I got out of all that, talking with lawyers and stuff like that, is never use a metaphor when an example will do. And this is where the critical thinking and abstract examples come from. Critical thinking means you can develop a wonderful story. You set the parameters in a way that somebody starts to think what you think. And that's why these abstract examples are absolutely ridiculous to anybody who has any experience. But to somebody who has no experience, they focus your thoughts into a certain framework, which does not benefit you. You always hear this. Imagine, which would you prefer? A girl with 500 notches on her belt, but she's loyal and blah, 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 or a virgin girl that has an OnlyFans account? It's like, yeah, if you're looking at that as purely an abstract critical thinking experiment, oh, well then it's asking you, what do you value? Would I rather a girl be a whore, or would I rather a girl play a whore on TV? Which is a stupid question because you don't fucking know. How many guys have ever had to make that choice? You have no idea what you would do. You won't know it until you meet that girl. And there's a total difference between first date with the girl you find out versus you're married with 2 kids and then you find out. Doug, I see. I'll get to you just 1 second. I like the new photo, by the way. Total difference to how you would act. Do you know how many married guys I know who got red pilled after marriage because they found out while they were dating their girl she was fucking a football team? And they're like, well, now what do? We got 2 kids in a house in the Hamptons. Do I just nuke it because she was a whore before we even got married? And they have this real existential crisis. So what do the guys do? They go fuck some strange. You know why? Because the issue isn't my wife was a whore before we met. Their issue is I wasn't a whore before we met. And so guys go get their whore out of their system. And that's another thing. So back to Tiffany's thing about the sincere family thing. Let's look at all the parties in that one, right? And this is not a hypothetical. This is like a real thing. This real people have had this happen. As a guy, you value chastity because blah, 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 monkey brain, sure. And then you find out your girl did not value chastity. Did she cheat on you afterwards? You have no idea. Probably not. You've got no indication of that, but you have that horrible past. I saved myself for marriage and she did not. And so he's like, you know what? I can't get past this emotionally. I'm going to ruin the family unit. So I'm going to go fuck 5 or 6 girls on the sly, not tell my wife about it, not deal with it, and come back and everything is fine. The family moves on. Kids are doing well. Kids are in school. Everybody's happy. Is that a bad situation to be in? It's an ugly one. It's a human one. It's just what that's what people do. And I would argue that's actually a pretty decent strategy. If that's what it takes for a man to develop his frame, fuck 5 or 6 strange girls, cheat on his wife, and then find out, you know what? It's not really that awesome. My wife was just as good. Like there's no pussy falling from the sky out there that I'm missing out on. There's no fear of missing out because I went and checked. It's not there. And they're like, fine, going back to it. Maybe the same guy also finds out, well, you know what? I love my family. I love my wife. I love this stuff. That's the Jason or Justin Waller thing, right? But the strange is exciting. It's not because the girls are any good. It's just I like the hunt. Then he goes back and he's a really good father to his kids. All his needs are met. He has no desire to sleep with any of her friends and embarrass her publicly. Do these work? Yes. Are they would I suggest them to you? Probably not. I don't know you and your situation. Plus, if you have to give a guy tips and tricks on infidelity, he's not ready. He's not ready. I wouldn't even bother with that. That's kind of what you're sitting here. And that's why when I wrote Frame and I wrote Dread, it's never, and this is why like the whole thing is not an ideology or a philosophy. It's a praxeology. Because it's up to you to decide how you want to process this. If you want to be the guy that needs to get 5 notches under your belt to get past your wife not being a virgin when you met her, give her. If your wife can accept that, then you guys can move on and be a happy family. If she can't accept it, well, then everybody makes their choices and they move on, right? But it's honest, and it takes a lot of self-reflection. Yeah, but the guy's not honorable and he's not this. No, he's not. Does he have to be? Is there a requirement? He's a human being, and human beings are full of all kinds of nonsense. Speaking of the opposite of nonsense, Doug Chisholm, $49.99. Praxeology, Frame, and Dread. Thanks, Ryan. Life is good and gets better. Yeah. Dude, I remember when I saw your very first super chat and we kind of talked offline a bit and I heard about your story. It's like, you really are like an amazing story of a guy who like gets it and gets there. I know he's Ryan's friend, but I don't trust Justin Waller. Why would you trust anybody? Why would you trust me? Do you think I know you? Do you think I like you? Do you think we're friends? No? Stop looking for dad online. You shouldn't be trusting any of us. I'm not asking for trust. I don't even want it. I don't need it. The only people who need your trust are the ones who want to bilk you for money. The whole goal on here is this, on this side, it's entertainment, it's education, it's infotainment. And you're going to take from it what you want, whether it's the entertainment value, whether it's the information value, whether you like the being associated with the brand, which whatever, I don't know why you would, but that's fine. Maybe it's just maybe you're here because you really enjoy chat. That's your thing. I love the chat in here. The guys are just very knowledgeable about this, that, and the other thing. That's fine. It's a very clear, and again, this is about the honesty thing. It's a very clear value distinction. But as soon as you start treating this like a cargo cult and treating me like I'm Dad 2.0 is when you get the Jordan Peterson shit right now. The Jordan Peterson stuff, clinical psychologist, a lot of wonderful work, a lot of wonderful lectures. They tried to cancel him over some trans pronouns things. He becomes super famous. All of a sudden he finds out a lot of guys are struggling. He's like, I can help all these guys by scaling my clinical psychology to the masses. works out really well. The masses perform audience capture, saying, hey, do this, do this. Now he starts doing everything they want to do, starts adding stress to him. A lot of haters come in there because I'm going to make my bones by taking down Jordan Peterson. He gets hooked on drugs. He almost dies. His wife gets things from cancer. His daughter whores herself out to steal off his fame. And now he's sitting there, cashed out, jaded man on Daily Wire, ranting about those goddamn liberals for $8 million a year. And kudos to him. I could not think of a better exit strategy than selling out and becoming an empty shell of your former self. Absolutely wonderful. It's like Kiss, man. Kiss is awesome. No, Kiss is a business. That's the Gene Simmons band, if you guys don't know. Yeah, well, this information works. I was doubtful at first, then amazingly, go figure, it works. Well, I mean, that's the point. There's no trust. Doug is absolutely right. You're supposed to be doubtful. You're supposed to be highly skeptical of anything I'm saying or Rollo is saying. And that's like the opposite of audience capture. If you guys just start buying all this, well, Myron said this. Like, no, you're not helping you and you're not helping Myron. And that's why Myron shouldn't have listened to you guys as an audience. The audience is stupid. The audience has no idea what they're doing. That's why they're the audience and not the content creator, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Anyways, that was just a rant basically to say, yeah, you're supposed to be very skeptical. There's usually very easy things like try this yourself. Like when it comes to building frames, the idea of agree and amplify, muse mastery, fogging. Try these things out. Try a negative inquiry and interaction. And if you can't find that your interactions with your wife or girlfriend go better because of it, then yeah, ignore this. I'm just some idiot running his mouth. But I mean, I'm good at what I do. It's not that it's hard. It's just that the bar is really low. And like, dude, I tried fogging with the wife and yeah, we didn't have a fight that day. And then I tried Memory of a Goldfish the next morning and we didn't relive because normally our fights last 3 or 4 days because she wants to re-talk about it and then we have to fight all over again. I just stopped answering text messages that weren't about logistics only and we stopped having fights when I got home. There's all these little things to try and then, okay, so I'll try this and I'll try this and they all work. All right, and that's how you build the benefit of the doubt. If I tell you something that's completely off, like, what the hell is that? You're more likely to like, you know what? I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. If it comes up, I'll give it a shot. But you have to earn that. And you don't earn that when the audience just takes anything you say at face value. When the audience tells you anything you said at face value, you get hooked in that attention and you start saying the dumbest shit ever. That's how fucking Myron got that whole, if you don't have the newest iPhone, the chicks won't fuck you. It's like, really? Really? Or is it just the case that everything you tell your audience, they say, thanks, man, you're saving lives. I got the newest iPhone now. I spent $1,200. Thanks, man. It's like, dude, stop. Fucking stop. Anyways. Some men consider the rational male to be a Bible of sorts. Honestly, I think they consider the Bible the same way they consider Rollo to be the Godfather. It's mostly just satire. It's taking the piss. That's what the Brits call it. It's taking the piss. Steal this podcast. I've never read Steal This Book. Was it any good? Anyways, I just converted my girl from Android to Apple. Frame. Dude, I converted my girl from Apple to Android. But so back to the point is, yeah, even if you just want to do this as a business, you just got to watch what people did. And this applies to anything, any job you have. In the military, so much of the time you would just watch what other people did when you were younger and see how their careers ended up. And they're like, okay, I know what to do and I know what not to do. You watch your parents and their friends. When I was a kid, I used to watch them and their marriages. Now that worked out. And you watched how NAFTA just decimated the town and everybody was getting divorced and everybody was getting hooked on coke and then crack. And you're like, Jesus Christ, fucking brutal. Same thing with knowledge. The same way that I was looking at like Japan, warring states, Victorian era, France, brands here, family friends. Inbred Blaine taught me not to break somebody's arm over a chainsaw and how not to murder. I'm like, sounds good, man. A lot of times you just have to watch and observe and pay attention and see what everybody else is doing. And if it works, do it. And if it doesn't, don't. Same as me. He's running his mouth. Does this work? Well, I haven't tried it yet. Well, try it. Yeah, it didn't work. All right, well, I would probably ignore the next thing he says now too. Well, it sounds about right. But he's so entertaining. That's fine. Just don't listen to it. I converted my girl to heterosexuality. True story. Hey, that's why in Fuck Files I have chapters like chapter 5. So I slept with a lesbian. It's because guys have these experiences. Again, it's one of those I'm average. It's an experience. Guys are joking around about girls that are using them to cheat on their husbands. It's like, yeah, Heels over head for Rose, chapter 2. Like, yeah, every guy will run through these very similar experiences. And I think one of the underlying themes of that book is, like, you're not alone, man. You're not alone. Everybody has these same experiences who has some value. Seems you and Rolo acquired experience first, and that adds to credibility. Maybe. But the only way you'll know that I acquired experience is if I tell you things and they work. Ultimately, because remember, I don't know if you ever had this. Do you ever have that old guy when you're like a young pup and you're at the bar and this old guy sits there and he talks your ear off about, don't make the mistakes I made. I've got so much experience like this, but he's an absolute failure too. And the advice is just like cringe. I don't think experience matters. Honestly, it's really just a case of knowledge, spreading knowledge, encapsulating knowledge, and framing it into a way that's usable and digestible. I really do think so. But yeah, for the branding thing. So I know, okay, so what is it that gets a lot of brands nuked? Well, singular topics. The ones that went all in on MAGA, as soon as Trump got out of office, they were fucked. The guys that were Trump reply guys, nobody cares about them anymore. Nobody listens to them. They're dead. The guys who are all like, MAGA's gonna save us, Trump went away, what happened to them? They're dead too. Anthony Johnson's still wearing that stupid fucking hat. Nobody gives a shit. What's the things that get people into trouble as well? Well, it's usually sleeping with other collaborators. Dude, never sleep with an influencer. I don't care who you are. Sleeping with an influencer is giving them, here, when you need a boost to your career, please throw me under the bus. Because I would love that. Lauren Southern, great example for that. I know she's a Canadian and I like all Canadians equally, but she was part of that whole let's do coke and let's diddle each other thing, and she's sleeping with Destiny and all this stuff right there. What happened? Well, I had a kid, my dad left, things are going rough, I need to restart my brand. I am going to sell out everybody. I am going to tarnish the reputations of, I don't know, Stefan Molyneux and all those guys as a bunch of just degenerate assholes, and I was just the wee little girl in the middle. It's like, Jesus. Yeah, don't shit where you eat. If you ever sleep with an influencer, and I know Troy's kind of sleeping with one right now, but maybe he's the exception. Who knows? It's my rule. It's not his rule. I'm just saying, I stick by my rule. Are you having a laugh, mate? Yeah, half of these influencers do blow like Derek for real. Yeah, I'm surprised how many people do blow casually. Maybe it's because of my childhood. All like people in my town were doing blow, and it's just kind of, I'm going to rebel against the family. I'm not going to do drugs. And I'm going to college. Fuck you, Dad. It's like the weirdest daddy issue ever. I'm going to go make something myself and invest in TFSAs. I have no son. A real man would have bought rocks. Like, a real man should have bought a loader, started digging holes for a living. Nonstop Dre, 360, $2 super chat. The Ryan pill is timeless, yeah. Anyway, so you watch this stuff and you just see what do all the brands make for mistakes. They singular topics. They ride the coattails of the coolest, newest thing. Did you see that guy? Oh yeah, the comic guy. Dude, I feel bad for the guy, but I'm also like, what the fuck did you think was gonna happen? He was making a Andrew Tate comic. Or Tristan, I don't know which one. I still think of him as like the same guy. But he was making a Tate comic. And Tate was like, yeah, make 1,000 copies, buy them all, we'll publish, we'll push it out there to be great for branding. So the guy did all that stuff, no contract, just a handshake. You know, hey, these Romanian money launderers that are using women for webcam businesses, I think we could trust them with a virtual handshake. I mean, they nodded on the camera. That's good enough for me. Bought himself 1,000 copies of a comic, made his own comic, spent like half a year of his life working on it. Then Tate just made his own cheap, shitty one and sold that instead. And the guy's sitting there, he's like, yeah, I got a brand new family. My wife just had her kid and I'm broke and I really need help. And then all the war room guys are like, fuck you, man. He never promised you shit. You weren't loyal enough. You should have kept quiet about this grift. I just pay attention to shit like that. It's like, hey, if some influencer wants you to do something for them, get a contract. Well, I don't want a contract. Well, then you don't want an influencer. Make sure they pay up front then. Make sure they pay up front. Tate man. Yeah, his superpower is kidnapping women. His superpower is he can go shirtless on a podcast with impunity. That matters. It was the same as the military. I was watching a lot of guys there doing things, and Like, granted, the espionage thing came out of pure left field. Nobody had an example of that before or since, except for one guy, but he actually was selling shit to the Russians. So I can't really go on that experience, because my lesson to that was, well, don't sell classified information to the Russians. And then you don't have to go to jail for 20 years, and your wife doesn't have to take your pension. Family is like the cornerstone in people's lives, in some people's lives. And that's the thing. If it's a cornerstone in your life, that's awesome. That is your value. That is your ethic. Nobody can take that away from you. But you can't assume that's everybody's. You can't preach it. You can't force fit into something. You also have to understand that the way you define family, Tiffany, is different than the way other people define family. For some people, it's a stepdad. For some people, it's a nuclear family. For other people, it's a single mom. They have good or bad ideas of what a family should be, what a family could be, and their best ideas. And I find where people lose the point is when they assume my way is the way. Instead, take a step back. What are the things that make your way work? And where are the limits of your work? And this is another honesty thing. The nuclear family, it's great. Historically, it works pretty well. You know, it's a small blip. Is it better than stepdads and shit? I don't know. Time will tell. But there's certain parts of it that are really good, like the principles of it that work really well, and there's certain principles of it that don't work well. If I remember correctly, in like the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, there was a lot of brothels. And a lot of these married guys would go sleep with a prostitute and then go home, hang out with their wives, right? Is that a good part of... Well, that's kind of like the underside of it. You have that nuclear family thing, and the guy kind of gets his needs met elsewhere, and they turn it into a business. Do you not like that? Well, then... But, I mean, that's the point, is that you see the parts that work, and absolutely repeat those, replicate those, get other people to try those, see if they like it or it works. The parts that don't work, you have other people running experiments in their lives. Like right now, you have people doing poly things where it's closed on your end, open on my end. And I know Justin Waller's big on that one, and I know a lot of people like him or don't like him. I don't really care. I think it was Hotep Jesus, same thing. He was talking about that. Well, what do you think about guys that just, like, I'll settle down with you. It's a whatever you want to Ming ring, but I go whatever. I'm like, just let me know how it works out, because that's all my interest is. If he's passing his girl around to dudes on Tinder while he wants to sleep with other people, that's the Jack Murphy thing. And he somehow gets some aspect of his life is just thriving. I'm like, dude, that is interesting. So now if that one aspect of his life that's thriving is something that I would want, well, then I'll adopt that stuff for my own. And if it's something that you would want, hey, I've always wanted to be this kind of guy. What's the thing? Well, there's Jack Murphy guy. Oh, that guy, he's such an idiot. Yeah, he is. But this thing here he did actually got him that. So it might be something to consider for your game plan. Then the guy tries it and he's like, actually, yeah, it does work. Then it becomes a thing. Wrap a narrative around it, put an essay on it, throw it out there. Once you get a bunch of people doing it. Maybe he's like, yeah, for me, did not work. It actually made things worse. You're like, all right, that's probably not a good thing then. Or there's some principle that we kind of were missing or some variable we're missing, right? And that's kind of how this red pill stuff goes. Honestly, I wish, Tiffany, that girls had their own little red pill thing. But it's hard because girls can't not talk in some kind of like... You put a bunch of girls in a room, they're going to create a little sewing circle about it, compete with each other over this shit. A lot of passive-aggressive sniping. It's just the way women organize. Guys tend to organize hierarchically around an idea and an abstract concept. So it's something that we're able to do that it doesn't seem that women are able to do, at least not instinctively. That's the one advantage that guys have. We're able to think about the idea and not the people. Ryan, I really like the Elmo talks on X. Oh, yeah. I got Elmo. I got the Miji restoration. Yeah. It's going to be fun. We're going to have fun with this. AI, I finally found a use for AI. Nonstop Dre, $2. The Ryan pill needs an arch enemy for the brand. I mean, how many do I already have? There's always a new one. There's that Emily chick. She can't stand me. There's the Savvy Writes book. She can't stand me. You guys don't know who she is. There's Anthony Johnson. He fucking hates me. And rightfully so, because I've earned the skill after he turned into a fucking prick. Tate hates me, but he's too big now, so he doesn't care. There's always going to be somebody that hates me. That Purple Pill podcast guy, but he just hates me because it gives him clout. So I don't even bother giving it to him. But I'm at the point, I don't really need a villain. Pearl hates me, which, to be fair, I earned that one too. But she drew first blood, not me. But does it matter? Like, if you weren't going to find out who I was, it's like, dude, I hate Pearl, and Pearl hates him, therefore I like him. It's like, that's not the kind of audience I want. That doesn't help any of us. Because he'll only be here because I want to see you yell at everybody I hate. It's like, I am not your sword of justice, internet autist. Fuck that. Who's Ryan's Vegeta to his Goku? Jesus Christ, you realize I'm too old for Dragon Ball Z, right? Like, I'm literally, I think I was a year too old to get into Dragon Ball. And that's the problem. Had I was just born a year later, I probably would have gotten into the tail end of it and then had the whole college experience watching Dragon Ball, but I never did. You're right. There needs to be an RB comparable resources for women. Nothing out there right now because even the women doing the content doing it in such a way to appeal to men. Oh, yeah, God. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, Pearl's a great example of that. Pearl figured out how to be, hey, I could be Paul Elam with smaller tits. The Savo post on Pearl was gold. He did what you said would. Yeah. Well, that's when Pearl was finally done with my shit. She's like, you could make fun of me for being a horse and a centaur and all this shit, but don't ever say I slept with Kevin Savo. And I'm like, dude, that's pretty harsh. Pearl is his Frieza. God, I gotta learn all these references. Can you guys make these into Astro Boy references so I can understand what the fuck you're talking about? Oh, I know the basics. I know it's, I get it. To be honest, here's my understanding of Dragon Ball Z, or Dragon Ball, is Fist of the North Star, but more childish. Does that make sense? I think that's close. I think it is. Fist of the North Star, there's like the North, South, East, and West stars. They're like the ultimate fighters. They got like sort of magical powers. It's based on Tai Chi. And there's always like fantastical, hyper stylized fights. You know, one touch of death, guy's head explodes, shit like that. That's how I understand it. Tell me how close I am. Has anybody here watched Dragon Ball Z and Fist of the North Star? Am I close? Astro Boy, what year did it come out? I think Astro Boy came out in like the late 70s, to be honest. Okay, yeah, so it's Fist of the North Star for kids. Yeah, Astro Boy came out in like the late 80s, late 70s, early 80s, I think. But a lot of the TV I had was like older TV because of satellite dish. So it was just the stuff I got into. Same as like the old 1960s Spider-Man and Incredible Hulk cartoons. And then G.I. Joe came out in like the early 80s, and that was like the coolest shit ever, and the Transformers and the A-Team and all that. Sorry, too young. Well, that's the thing, right? Yeah, 70s boomer. Honestly, when it comes to this stuff, the satellite dish was the greatest thing for pop culture. I basically got to experience 40 years of childhood in 10 years. I was the 90s kid who got to be an 80s kid, a 70s kid, and a 60s kid all at the same time. It was awesome. I'd watch Mr. Ed at night, and then next day I'd watch Transformers, and then after that, an episode of Ren and Stimpy. I'm like, how awesome is that? I think you would like Fist of the North Star, honestly. This is me. Like, for the vibes of old anime, like 1980s anime, I just like it better. I don't know how to explain it, but if you watch it and if you don't know what you're looking at, you watch it as if it's like technically not as well done as stuff today, right? There's no CG in this. It's all drawn. It's like a little scratchy and whatever. But like, if you watch that as like if it was a stylistic choice, I just find it so much better. Because Fist of the North Star does not have good animation at all. At all. Yeah, and Ren and Stimpy. Dude, I used to love Ren and Stimpy. It's famous for your already dead meme. Yeah. What's that? Itare wa monshinderu. Nani? Psing. I guess I should call this last section bantz, because we're kind of off the relationship thing. But I mean, we can't be sitting here talking serious all the time, right? Imagine just sitting here and every day is like, yeah, guys, dicks. Get fucking bored. But I enjoy it. You watch a lot of the old stuff of everything for it, like 70s movies, like the Dirty Harry stuff. Absolutely fascinating. I love that stuff too. In a different vibe, and you can kind of see, and then you have like 80s action, which, I mean, who doesn't love like good old Commando or Rambo 3, shit like that. And then you get the 90s stuff like your Die Hards, and then you get the late 90s stuff like the Matrix. Like everything has its own style to it, and if you watch it not thinking of movies and pop culture and cartoons as in like a constant search for perfection, like an upwards trajectory towards perfect, and you watch each one based on its own merits, you'll find things are fascinating. Like Astro Boy, when I talked about that one, it is amazing how adult-like they treated kids. There's this meme that Gen X was 30 years old by the time they were 10, and they've stayed at 30 years old until they were 60. And I'm like, oh, it makes sense. Astro Boy was a story about a guy who was a scientist, a robot builder, and he was ignoring his kid. And his kid wanted to go see a spaceball game. And he's like, yeah, go do it. And then the kid took the car. He's like, I'm taking the car. I'm going to go see the game then, Dad, if you don't want to come. He's like, yeah, that's fine. And then he's like, wait a minute. Kids can't drive robot cars. Kid gets into an accident. Kid dies. The doctor is so sad. I was like, I've been such a shitty dad that he recreates his son as a robot. It was supposed to be like he fights crime. He does this stuff, shoots lasers. And the kid, he's trying to teach the kid to be a real boy like Pinocchio. But he's like a horribly abusive dad. Like his kid would just start yelling at him. You're an idiot. You're not my real son. And you're like, holy shit. And you're like, and you realize this is kind of one of those, yes, the kid is watching Astro Boy, seeing a kid stop, save crimes, save people, be nice and moral, but also learn how to be like an adult. And then you're watching the dad of the character learn how to be a proper father, not an abusive asshole. And I'm like, these are some really adult-like, in-depth themes for a kid's cartoon that you're watching. A Famicom. They call it Nintendo, sir. We're not Japanese. Astro Boy's true story is kind of sad. I think Dad wanted to off him or something. Yeah, it's similar. Like Mega Man was based on Astro Boy. Basically Mega Man. But yeah, it's an interesting one. You watch this stuff, and Dragon Ball fights were loved because they had emotional weight within the story. Unfortunately, it's been lost with time over the hype for the sake of hype as the series got to its end. Yeah, most things get like that. Pearl is mad because you accused her of liking white boys when she likes I remember that. Isn't that the meme about her? Is that she shits on fat black women all the time? And then everybody's like, wait a minute, she's dating all these black guys, but then when she goes back to her family, her dad, she like hides it all from them. Shit like that. Oh yeah, so back with this thing. So yeah, you don't have to have an art history, sit here stodgy reading books. And I guess that kind of ties into the whole, I'll call this anime bantz. You don't have to tie into stodgily sitting in a library reading about the Meiji restoration in order to get some like knowledge about this. Sometimes it's pop culture stuff. You watch old Ultraman cartoons, you watch the Giant Robo series, you watch old films from the 70s, the way parents acted. You watch, a great example is that meme. I was talking about Irish divorces with Divorce Boy. Why can I remember his name right now? Andrew and fuck, it'll name will come to me. Anyways, talking about no fault divorce. That's that other meme everybody's. Without no fault divorce, families would be together forever because they love each other, but they just wanted a divorce out of nowhere. What the hell? And then you watch those old TV shows where the issue wasn't separate. Like you could separate from anybody at any time. They'd call them Irish divorces. I'm going to go out and get some smokes. And you never come home. I'm going to go get some milk. But you couldn't remarry. And that was the issue. And that was how people were like, let's make marriage sacred. You only marry once. And so if you really want to leave somebody, you forfeit your right to be married. I think that was a pretty decent trade. Of course, you know, legally wise, that's jamming up the courts with a bunch of people making up fake shit to get divorced. But it used to be a trope in old TV shows. Guy and a girl fall in love. Oh, I just want to get married. Oh, I have a secret. I already have a husband. We've been separated for 10 years. And the theme of this and the premise of the show was we have to go find him and convince him to give me that divorce I want so you and I can get married and be happy together. There's like All in the Family, I think, had an episode of it. There's some movies of it. That was the old rom-com of the girl working in a magazine shop and then, oh, I found this guy and I hated him, but then a magic event happened and we were singing Sweet Caroline at the bar and now I love him and now we have to do some big showy thing. And yeah, that was what they used to do back then. I gotta find a way to convince this guy to divorce my girl so I can marry her. But yeah, just knowing a lot of this old stuff really helps. So when you hear people rambling on about no-fault divorce being the end of the family unit, you know it's full of shit. Like, do you really want to go back to Irish wedding or Irish divorces, sir? Irish divorces, Irish sunglasses, Irish twins. What's with the Irish having all of these horrible relationship metaphors. Like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, it sounds like a bad Hallmark movie. And all it takes is a satellite dish and one of those red card hacks, so that way you can get all the channels that you weren't supposed to pay, that you didn't pay for. I recall seeing it in 03, but it was canceled after one season. Every man only gets married twice, to learn from the first one. But it's one of those interesting things. And obviously there's too much out there for one person to know everything. And so it's always good to swap notes with other men, or other women in your case, rare. Ms. Camellia. You may know, I have all the knowledge of Mr. Ed, and that kind of gives me a bit of knowledge of like how they aspired to be in relationships in the 1950s. You're like, well, I watched a bunch of Astro Boys, so I see a lot of like broken family units in the 70s and 80s and how they kind of got around it. No, he's all in the family, and this guy was like a researcher of the Meiji Restoration, and this guy here is like a Victorian expert, and everybody gets together and they start talking about things like, hey, that episode of Astro Boy reminds me a lot of Prince Hubert in France in 1766 who did this, and then everybody swaps notes and you start to see themes and experiences that come out of it. Sometimes they're not even true, but there's something to learn from that too. A lot of tweets, like Wine More Please did a tweet where he was talking about some girl found out her husband had an OnlyFans subscription and she felt heartbroken. He's been cheating on me with an OnlyFans girl. And to his point was like, dude, guys are going to want variety. Like, one pussy is not enough. So it's like, whatever, get over yourself. It's not cheating. It's just it's a $10 subscription or whatever it was. Everybody got really mad about that, but he's right. It's not like he threw a dick into a chick or anything. It's not really cheating. Of course, you never hear the details that matter. It's like, how sexually available are you, woman? Are you in shape? Do you still look good? Are you still available? Is fucking you more of a chore than actual fun? Is it any surprise the guy's like, well, I got two choices then. Leave you, cheat on you, or get some porn. And he picks the least destructive option because he loves you so much. And then you chastise him for it. Tisk, tisk, tisk. It's because the Irish are Catholics, I suppose. Oh, fair enough. So yeah, I mean, and that's kind of where I'm getting with this. So you hear something like that, and you think back to and this is tired of people talking about their aspirations. What do I think the perfect relationship is like? Well, what did they think a perfect relationship was like in the 50s? What do they think it was in the 70s? What do they think it was in the 80s? What do they think it was in the 1700s? And obviously, if there's an aspiration, people don't live up to it. And so then you kind of get into it and you realize, oh, so this is what they tried to do, and this is what actually came of that. They tried to be prudish and puritanical, and they're jerking each other off in absinthe bars. And then you kind of like take these small tidbits of wisdom, hundreds of thousands of little tidbits, of which you only know maybe a third of, but you have 3 friends, and so all of you guys have like a complete knowledge. And that's ultimately, and I would say this works for anything. Anything you want to learn about. You get enough people bang their heads together, they kind of start to put together the picture. It's a concept, and I'm going to end on this. It's a concept called convergent evidence. If you've never heard of it, it's because you know how there's certain levels of confidence you can have in things. Mathematical proofs are about 100% confidence. As far as I can tell, I think they're the only thing in the science that you can say have 100% confidence in. Nope, math checks out. This is 100% true. And then as you get closer to like, physics, then, you can usually say it's true. Models of the thing, quantum things, like, yes, we can't say it's 100% true. We just going to say it's the best explanation we got and we cannot disprove it. And then you start getting to the social sciences where it's like, well, 85% chance we got this one right. And then you get to like normal science where you're like, it's a 50-50 shot. And then modern science where it's like 40% chance, 40% of things can't be replicated, or 60% or 70% can't be replicated of what we know today in science, which means you're literally better off not just ignoring the scientific literature out there right now, but actively doing the opposite of it. And 8 times out of 10, you will be right. How fucked is that? Now, if you get a very low confidence thing, pick anything, doesn't really matter. Chicks love the guys with the newest iPhone or whatever. No confidence in this, but I'm like, dude, I've been fucking girls in Miami and this is what they came up with. And I'm going to pretend this example is true. So we're going to kind of go with this. And then you get some guys in the Midwest. It's weird. I noticed this too. Like, I was doing some research about sexuality. Turns out divorces, 90% of the divorces that were in my area were girls with Android phones. So maybe the iPhone thing has some merit. We're not sure why, but it's there. And then you get 5 or 6 people, you know, one's a divorce attorney, one's a pickup artist in Miami. Another one is just some guy who like technically knows the ins and outs. Well, it turns out that Androids have more radiation. You put them in your pockets. A lot of guys lose sperm count because of it. And it's like, neither one of these things you can say, well, because of the sperm count, girls hate men with Android phones. Well, it's because of Miami hoes. That doesn't count. Like every individual piece of evidence is a very low confident evidence, but they all are pointing to the same direction. Now, this is bullshit. This is a bullshit story, but I'm illustrating a point. I'm not describing a point, so bear with me. And that's the point, is that you get all of these disparate pieces of low confidence evidence, but they are all pointing to the same thing. That same thing now gets a level of confidence you otherwise wouldn't have. And this is the benefit of men swapping notes, or, you know, hopefully the girls here start swapping notes on their own little girl red pill circle, call it the pink pill or whatever you want to call it. And they figured out a way to lock down a man and make them happy and get cookies baked on the weekends or whatever the fuck it is you want. It's fine. It's great. Yeah. And that's why I shit on shitty content creators so much. You're actively making things harder for me. I do not like it. I don't go to your work and slap the dicks out of your mouth. Don't come to my work and start telling guys to buy the newest iPhone and subscribe to the War Room. I don't give a shit. Oh yeah, that's right. Irish Catholics, the rule of thumb, that one too. But yeah, I really enjoy this stuff. I find it's like cooking. I like cooking. I love cooking because what do? Every day? I eat every day. Everybody eats every day. You're going to eat 165 times 3 is like 1,200 meals a year for 100 years. Why would you not want to learn a little bit about how that works? That process. How does it work? What makes food go better? The idea is that Miami has the highest concentration of attractive women and men with dollars, so the dating market is difficult. Oh yeah, so it's just more competitive, more cutthroat. But I mean, if you're moving to Miami, you're probably moving to Miami because you have a fortune, so you should be in that realm. But that's just go to where the market's good for you, right? Where was I going with this one? I ended up the convergent evidence. Actually, I think that's about it. Let's make fun of somebody, and then let's call it an episode. You guys fun with that? It's, by the way, let me pull it up. I got, where's our goddamn episode? I do believe Thor was handling it today, but I don't see where the link to it is. Is it that one? No, that's Dragon Ship. Oh, there it is. The Iger. Oh, we're talking about Elon Musk's, Elon Musk doing that shit, telling the Disney guy to go fuck himself. It's in about 15 minutes. I tell you what I'll do. If you guys are into that, I will do a redirect to it. I think Thor has his redirects on. And then what we'll do is go grab some breakfast. And then what we'll do is have some fun together. I'll take off these glasses because I don't need to read on Rule 0. I don't got to read for shit. I can wear the bead necklaces. I can put on the yellow sunglasses. I can get my backwards Arizona iced tea pink baseball cap. Oh, we're going to have so much fun. We're going to have so much fun. So much fun. All right, let's make fun of one more person. Oh! You know what? I don't want to deal with Erudite. She's annoying even on that fucking ad, even though it's funny. I want to make fun of Stedman. Where is he? Stedman 2. Come here, you goofy little bastard.
You want to tell me why the majority of people that voted yes, I can be submissive are men?
Just want to talk a little bit about why I love women.
And the majority that said no are women? I would love y'all to ponder that for a fucking second!
I love how they always make sure, by and large, they shower the feminine energy that girls put out. It's magnetic.
You think I can be submissive? You fuck!
I adore it.
'79T 2458 Learning Corp. Little Red Riding Hood. Take 1.